having tough conversations, that those conversations are always about ideas and not people. That's hard. And as a person who works in an open organization, I find myself often having to divorce myself from my ideas, again, and understand that a repudiation of my idea is not a repudiation of me as a person. It's not a repudiation of what I stand for or who I am at my core or anything like that. Open organizations thrive on honest dialogue. How can I encourage and participate in open conversations without hurting anyone's feelings or making people uncomfortable?
Great question. I think this is just a general life answer here is how do we talk to other humans without immediately creating discomfort or hurt feelings? Open organizations, because it requires a different level of vulnerability and transparency to make them work, automatically can be very uncomfortable until people have learned to lean into that and to kind of feel out what that space looks like. So kind of be aware that right off the bat, you may feel that it's just a little bit awkward to something that you may not have been used to before. But I think when we come back into thinking about how do we just have conversations and communicate with each other, we have to just kind of pull back and almost again remove the open organization part, remove the workplace part, just think about how am I going to communicate with this other individual or a team of people. What is it about my presentation style that may make somebody uncomfortable? And I think that, this really goes back to some of the old school basics, like reading a room and body language and thinking about tone of voice, even the choice of the words that we're using. Because often, especially when we feel pressed with, a lot of task lists going on, we have deadlines, we have a lot of things happening, and it's very easy for us to slip into a place where we forget that maybe we're a little high strung at the moment, we're a little, not our usual selves, and then we kind of snap off when we're talking. And, I've had that happen before where I'm just like, oh, I did not mean to say the thing the way I just said it. And, oh, how do I pull it back? It's too late because now people have an impression that, well, this is how Jen behaves now. And so I think we have to just become more and more self-aware and more cognizant of who we are, how we are in a moment before we engage them with the other people. And then, put your little spidey senses on and feel out how is everybody else in the room. And this, by the way, just takes a couple of seconds. It's just a slow down, take a breath, check in with the people in the room that you're having a conversation with. Then we can step into that space together and be a little bit more vulnerable and be aware of what's happening. I think that's a big part of how we even start building trust with each other is that very thing. It's just slowing down, taking a breath, and then connecting.
Yeah, I think like anything else in an open organization, it's a matter of culture. So it's not just what you do to provide the kind feedback to people, but it's creating a culture where you're held accountable by your peers. And when somebody steps out of line and gives feedback that, while maybe true, is presented in a harmful way, you have to take them aside and say, look, this is not how we interact with each other in this group. We're all going to have these bad days where we come off like jerks and we don't mean to, but it's really up to everyone to hold each other accountable and develop a culture where feedback is expected to be candid but kind.
Yeah, agree with both of those. And I would say two things that I've found helpful in this regard are, one, to make sure that when you're having tough conversations, that those conversations are always about ideas and not people. That's hard. And as a person who works in an open organization, I find myself often having to divorce myself from my ideas, again, and understand that a repudiation of my idea is not a repudiation of me as a person. It's not a repudiation of what I stand for or who I am at my core or anything like that. It's just, I had an idea, I proposed it, somebody had a better one. So the feeling that you get when you experience that is disappointment. It's like, oh, darn, that is a good idea. I was really excited about what I thought. I thought I had that solved, but That's right. That person's correct. That idea wasn't as great as the other one, whatever it might be. And so you feel that sort of sense of like downness, but it's not hurt feelings as much as it becomes disappointment that it didn't, whereas hurt feelings is this person attacked me and is saying something about me as a person and my ability to solve problems and my ability to function in my job. And so there's a two-way street there.
Well, I think you're right, Brian, about looking at it as an idea or a concept that you're presenting, and looking at that as the conversation even separate from yourself as a person. Because I think, it's very easy to get the hurt feelings and feel like it's a personal attack. Especially, let's just say you presented an idea or a concept that didn't have any legs yet. It's still just barely an idea, and then everybody kind of gobbles it up and starts shredding about, there's no legs to it, and there's no this and there's no that, and our first feeling is, wow, what is wrong with me? Like that's kind of that human reaction that we have, like, why didn't I think of all the things? But I think that's really a strong point to make, is if we can separate ourselves from the other parts of the interaction, especially when we're working as a team and looking at how do we solve problems, what are the ideas. And I think that was actually really helpful for me when we started working as an ambassador team, when we've been, building things over the years, is I hadn't had that experience before. So when I was new coming into that kind of experience, it was really hard for me initially to understand that every time I said something and there was a yes and kind of answer, that it wasn't about me being less than, not having enough information, or, not being educated enough on a topic. It was just, it wasn't about me, right? It was about, I didn't have enough, whatever I presented needed more work to it, right? And I think that's just a great helpful tip for people to think about it that way.
Which is why I don't always succeed, but I try to avoid the language of sort of good idea, bad idea. Because ideas aren't necessarily always good or bad on the face of them, right? They're always presented in context. And in organizations, typically when we talk about ideas, we're talking about proposed solutions to a problem. And so a solution to a problem isn't good or bad. It's more appropriate to say that the solution is more effective or less effective for solving that problem. And so when I say you have good ideas, that is often a statement. It can be construed as a statement about the person. You're very smart. You have good ideas. It's what I try to say is like that solution is a really effective way of solving that problem. Or I had not considered that approach to fixing that. Or I had not considered that way of looking at that. Right? Because it's about, again, it centers the challenge, the shared mutual challenge ahead of you, and then you're talking about solutions. Not necessarily about abstract concepts like this is good or this is bad. I prefer this is effective or this is not as effective, because you're all building toward a shared goal, and that's what you need to keep front and center. So the original question, I guess, circling back to it, is, how can I encourage people to have those conversations without hurting anyone's feelings? I think it would be to people say that don't bring your feelings into it. That I don't find that possible. Just divorce yourself of your feelings when you have these conversations. I don't find that advice useful. Maybe you do at home if you're listening, but I find that you can channel your feelings and your passions when you talk about solutions instead of people.
I just want to follow up on that. Do not separate yourself from your feelings. That's part of who you are, and that's part of being human. But it is learning the self-awareness and how to work with those feelings. But don't divorce yourself with your feelings.